Meeting. Today is February the 12th, and we will have Mr. Kumar. Please do a roll call.
Sure thing. 1 second, I'll move this over. Okay. Town of Ashland, Miss Amos.
Here.
New King County, Miss Inman.
Good morning, here.
Capital Region Airport Commission, Mr. Rutledge. Plan RVA, Mr. Bushing.
Here.
Mr. Ariel. Finder, Mr. McKeith.
Here.
Charles City County, Vice Chair Adams. Mr. Mitchell. Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas.
Here.
Powhatan County, Mr. Shardine. DRPT, Mr. Spinsky. Mr. Hudson.
Mr. Hudson's here.
RMTA, Ms. Simmons. Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Here.
And Ms. Buenelos.
Here.
Here. Henrico County, Ms. Smiler.
Here.
Mr. Ewer. City of Richmond, Chair Clark.
Here.
GRTC, Ms. Robinson.
Morning, I'm here.
Sir Robinson. And VDOT, Mr. Hagan. I'm trying to move it over. He is here, so I'm trying to see if he can go to the panelist. And that concludes our roll call.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I do think we have a quorum. So moving on, Miles, staff here had a couple notes on, did we get the approval of the meeting minutes for January 14th and not 15th corrected on the agenda? I wasn't sure if that was just, we saw it early and it was updated. But if not, I just wanted to make sure that it does reflect the 14th for the meeting minutes to be approved on the next item. And then second, we did have, and this is for just consideration for amendment to the agenda with Ms. Rhodes giving her last RRTPO TAC update last meeting. And that we ask that the meeting minutes reflect a new representative for the agenda. So with that, do we have a motion for approval of our last meeting minutes of January 14, 2025?
Madam Chair, this is Amy. I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
John O'Keefe, I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Opposed, please say nay. Hearing none, thank you. We'll move to the open comment period. Do we have anyone signed up to speak, either Miles or Seal? Sid?
We do not.
Oh, man. All right, moving on to the TAC chairman's report. I don't have anything to say other than we have a full agenda, and I look forward to moving through it as quickly as we can as we all prepare for the snow. Looks like a lot of us are at home, so I'm glad everyone was able to join us virtually. All right, item 7, the Transportation Improvement Program.
All right, and let me just share my screen. All right, everybody seeing that okay? Perfect. All right, thank you so much, Madam Chair. So the first tip amendment that I am bringing to you this morning is requesting to add the Hill Carter Parkway Extension Project to our tip. So this amendment is being requested by VDOT, and it is required due to the new nature of the project. This project stems from a successful Smart Scale Round 5 bid that was submitted by the town of Ashland, so kudos to y'all. So the Hill Carter Parkway Extension Project will construct a two-lane, two-way roadway that will connect North Hill Carter Parkway from Quarles Road to Kitty Hamilton Lane. In addition to the roadway enhancements, the project will also build 5-foot sidewalks on either side of the road. And this project aims to enhance safety for drivers and pedestrians through improved infrastructure and design. So this is the tip block given to us for the project as provided by VDOT. And today we are asking the TAC recommend approval of this tip amendment to the policy board. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
All right, do we have any questions? I don't know, Nora, if you would like to give any additional information or make the motion for approval.
Just a little bit. It is a safety project and obviously will help pedestrians, but for us, it's also to relieve congestion on Route 1 and 54 at that intersection. This is going to connect to an industrial area, so it'll allow for kind of a bypass for trucks to get to the interstate. So we're excited about the project. Happy to answer any questions. If there aren't any, then I'd like to make a motion for approval.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Joe. All right, all those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Thank you. That motion passes. Next item, please.
Okay, so I'll share my screen again. All right, so the next tip amendment that I'm bringing is the Green Chimney Extension Project. So this amendment is also being requested by VDOT and is necessary because it is a new project. And again, like the previous amendment, this project stems from its successful Smart Scale Round 5 bid from the town of Ashland. So the Green Chimney Project will extend the existing Green Chimneys Court roadway to connect with Hill Carter Parkway. In addition to the extended roadway, the project also calls for construction of 5-foot sidewalks on either side of the road. And this project's goal is also to improve safety for vehicles and pedestrians through improved infrastructure and design. Again, we have the tip block provided by VDOT. And we are requesting that the TAC recommend approval of this tip amendment to the policy board. And if anyone has any questions or further discussion, I'd be happy to take them.
Very good. Nora, VDOT. Anyone?
Yep. So again, it does have pedestrian improvements, vehicle improvements. It's a creation of it's filling in the connection between Route 1 and Hill Carter Parkway. Hill Carter Parkway being this is the southern portion that will connect to the northern portion, an industrial roadway that gets you between two 95 interchanges. And again, relieving some traffic from Route 1. So happy to make a motion for approval of the tip amendment.
So moved. Is there a second?
This is Barb, second.
Thank you. The motion has been moved in second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Awesome. That motion passes. If we can move on to our next item.
All right, thank you again. So this is
Thank
the
you.
final tip amendment that I am bringing to you today, asking that the NEPA stage of GRTC's permanent downtown transfer hub be added to the tip. So this amendment is being requested by GRTC, and again, is required due to this project being a new project going into the tip. So GRTC is in the beginning process of planning a permanent downtown transfer hub in downtown Richmond. The project is in the early stages of NEPA review and preliminary design. The purpose of NEPA review is to understand the range of alternative solutions and to assess the potential impacts that a proposed course of action may have to the natural or built environments. So a good way to sort of think about this project is sort of like we've done in the past in Short Pump. There's not actually construction that has started on this project, but wanting to go ahead and get the NEPA portion into the tip to really show that we have commitment for this project and that we are excited for it. So this would sort of be a starting point for the tip block. And then our ask again is that the Technical Advisory Committee recommends approval of the proposed tip amendment as requested by GRTC. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to take them. Thank you so much for all of your time.
Very good. We do have a question. Amy?
Good morning, Madam Chair. What, I couldn't see the block very well, and I'm sorry, I didn't see it in the agenda. Can you please tell us what funding that is that you're adding?
Sure. So it is a total, let me hop back actually so I can look at it real quick. Okay. So it is a total of 3 million that they have gotten right now, a combination of state and local funding. It is through DRPT's
Oh, okay,
merit grant.
got it. Okay, great.
Mhm.
I just was wondering what funding it was. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Any additional questions? Do we have a motion for approval?
This is Barb. So moved.
Thank you so much, Barb. Is there a second?
John O'Keefe, I'll second.
Thank you. It has been motion and second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Perfect. Thank you. That motion is approved. All right, for recommendation. Let's go keep on the GRTC theme and move into item 10, the FY26 Regional Public Transportation Plan. We were presented information on this previously, and today they are looking to take action. GRTC, Ms. Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I can share my screen here. There we go. Sorry about that. Yes, my name is Patricia Robinson with GRTC, just bringing back our Regional Transportation Public Transportation Plan FY26 annual updates. So we've seen this information before, but just to do the quick overview of what I'm asking here today. So with the creation of CBTA in 2020, that mandated the collaboration with the TPO to provide the CBTA with funding plans annually. So this is that plan for FY26. It'll include this presentation includes priorities, revenues, service updates, and next steps. So the recommendation would be that GRTC recommends the TPO TAC support GRTC's Regional Public Transportation Plan FY26 priority list. So the priority list that we're focusing on for FY26 is going to be that we ensure stability and maintenance of transit operations and operating at the same levels as FY25, prioritizing capital requirements to maintain assets in state of good repair, advanced planning studies for operational and capital mobility priorities and needs for the region, and then prepare for service updates in FY 2026. Our operating revenue breakdown is as follows. To maintain transit operations is 26 million. Planning studies is 100,000. That's going to be to support microtransit implementation and also fixed route service analysis. Our capital is going to maintain state of good repair and rider experience at 1.5 million. This includes our local share match funding. So our capital projects are listed below, and we do use 4% of capital match funding. And so out of that 4%, 2% comes from CBTA funds and 2% comes from local municipalities. And then as far as service updates for our fixed route and microtransit network, we are anticipating adding and expanding microtransit service and replacing some of our low ridership as well as limited service fixed routes that are kind of poorly performing and replace that with microtransit. You'll notice this list is a little bit smaller than our TSP. It's GRTC's aim to maintain levels of service in 26, take a step back, really do a deep analysis on what the system needs, what we're working with, and identify those next service priorities after we've given the network some time to just settle and maintain levels of service before we make additional changes. And then our next steps, so we're in February, so we're getting this priority list brought to the TPO TAC. The next step would be sending it to the Board of Directors for GRTC. And then the 26 memo style update would be presented to the TPO Policy Board and then CBTA TAC and full authority in April. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We do have questions. Sharon?
Okay. Hi, Patricia. Just with some of the route eliminations and replacement with microtransit, and I just want to have further discussions, as I indicated in the email, just about that there's the appropriate transition or overlap for 2 months, and that we further work that out just to make sure our customers,
Yes.
or
Yeah, and
understand
the
what's going
maps-
on.
Yeah, the maps I showed in the previous TPO TAC were very rough sketches right out of the implementation plan. So we'd be working with the jurisdictional partners to decide a service level, exact boundaries, and then more of that like marketing and outreach coordination to make sure that it launches really successfully. So yeah, this is just the very high level of that's our goal for 26, but there's absolutely more steps involved.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And Sharon, if I could just quickly add, as Barb is up next, that us three, I've heard we'll be working closely to really look at some of the next steps of that, sit back and watch how it stabilizes, then where we can go finding that money financially. So I also wanted to just point out that route elimination on existing routes, we want to make sure that that financial replacement is also recognized when we look at those types of scenarios. So I did want to bring that to point as I thought about it for this for our next responsibilities to GRTC. Barb?
Tricia, I was wondering if you can confirm roughly what you get from the CVTA annually. Is that what, if I look at the FY26 operating revenue slide, is that the amount?
Let me see if I can pull that up really quick. I'm not sure, Miles, if you can confirm.
Can't see anything yet.
Let's see.
So if I add up what's on the slide, it's 27.8. Is that your annual amount from CVTA?
Sorry, I'm trying to pull that up now just to confirm. I believe so.
And Barb, it's probably definitely close to a number that CFO probably would have given her as her
Yes.
boundaries, and whether or not that directly compounds to the exact number we can't know right this moment, but it may be something good to get Patricia for us.
Yeah, I just want to be sure that the plan is clear in connecting that funding and how that funding is planned to be programmed towards the different work tasks. Okay, we'll get that figured out.
Thank you. Mr. Hudson.
Question about the expansion in Stanston. Is that going to be an expansion in the number of vehicles or the service zone or both? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so it would be both. So we do
Great.
estimate that it would need 1 to 2 more vehicles to cover that additional plus or minus 4 square miles. of additional service.
Okay. I would just suggest let's make sure we have that conversation early before grant season next year gets rolling.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Amy?
Hi, good morning, Madam Chair again. Thank you. So, Patricia, just kind of following up on our conversation a couple of weeks ago regarding the commuter bus into New Kent County. As I mentioned, things are actively moving forward with the park and ride, and I guess I can follow up with additional information on that, but I guess where are you with I guess incorporating that into your future service?
Yes, so we didn't identify it as a priority for 26, kind of banking on that it still needs a little bit more of a needs assessment. And then when we were talking to Ride Finders, who has done public outreach in that area, as well as that survey, neither of those had highlighted the need just yet. So it just needs a little bit more analysis and needs assessment to move forward, and then potentially add it to a priority further down.
Okay, that's fair. I'd like to understand what that schedule looks like to get that study and how that's going to be conducted. And also just a reminder that we're a donor to GRTC in terms of our CVTA money. And I think we're well over 2 million at this point, and we don't receive any service. So that's just a side note. Thank you.
Thank you. Nora?
Hi, I'm just curious if you all have talked kind of system-wide, if the fares will remain no cost or if you're looking to bring back fares.
Yeah, so at this time we are still zero fare and still aim to be zero fare. So we are trying to maintain that level of service.
Thank you.
And do we have any additional questions? And Patricia, I was looking for just quickly the complete, you did send out kind of the complete PDF of the plan that we're speaking about? Or was it just a presentation? I'm sorry.
It was just the presentation. The more memo style document was going to be approved by the board, and then that'll go to CVTA and policy board.
And so what are you asking of this body?
Just to agree with GRTC's recommendation for the service priorities.
Which is included in this overall document.
Yes, so that'll be
Memo, or, I'm sorry.
yeah, slide 3 of the presentation, the FY26 priority list. And I can share that again if that's helpful.
Please.
So this is the list of priorities that we are asking for an action item for TPO to move forward with this recommendation.
Yeah, and so what we're looking at are seemingly, policy like strategies to prioritize the spending, which we've heard the input on knowing exactly what that pot is, and I think maybe linking the priorities in the memo with what's in the TSP, and pardon me about the nomenclature isn't right or the same for that anymore. So that again, yeah, we do see that clear parallel of what's in that document to what's said as a priority, and then what we see in the programming. I think we should have that clear alignment. But members here, you see that these are the kind of broad categorical priorities that they're seeking us to recommend for approval. let's see, advanced planning studies for operational capital mobility priorities and needs, I think addresses some of Amy concerns and others that are talking about the growth and the need for different types of service models or support financially for models in their communities as well. So with that, do we think that these statements are something that we can support GRTC with moving forward through the process? I think we will have the opportunity again, right, Patricia, in April to see this again.
That's correct.
All right, Miles, can you give me the language for the needed motion, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. We need a motion to recommend approval of the priorities from GRTC. And then I believe, Patricia, this is going to the GRTC board first, and then it would go to the policy board and CVTA. So it's kind of a tax and agreement. So it'll go to GRTC to then make their formal recommendation out to both of the other boards.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
Yep, almost are we accepting their approach here? Do we have a motion?
This is Sharon Smidler with Henrico. I make a motion to approve the GRTC fiscal year 26 priorities.
Thank you. So
Well,
moved.
this is Barb. I'll second.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second. For all those in favor of this motion, please vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That motion is approved. Moving on. I think we have taken care of most of our action business in a little under 30 minutes. So if anyone is overbooked, I'm close to it, but not, and have to run, thank you so much for being able to be here and get those action items out of the way. With that, we'll move to exciting item 11, the Bike Ped RVA 2045 update. Phil?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yep.
Thank you. I had to change my setup this morning, so just making sure. I am going to give everyone an update on what we discussed last month. For the update to the bike ped plan and the draft of the proposed projects and definitions of the spines and spurs, and also our spines and spurs proposed routes. So you might remember last month I provided everybody a link to a map. It would have been much more helpful, I think, if we had a story map prepared, but I didn't have that in time. Now it is prepared. I'm just going to, briefly go through a nice story map that I hope will be much more helpful. But again, last month we went over the spines definition, and this is from our previous bike ped RVA plan. We did not have a definition for spurs, so we proposed a definition for spurs for a spur. Both of those, we will take whatever feedback that you have. We've already received some feedback from some localities, but hoping to have feedback on all of this. So I'm going to provide this link for everyone to review, but I just want to show you some of the things. This is basically an enhancement of the previous map, but we proposed spurs, and obviously the purple is the existing spines, but you might see there's also the local spurs. Those are more for routes that don't reach into activity centers. They're more for those localized routes off of the spurs. Off of the spines. Some of the larger spurs are ones that connect into these activity centers from those spine networks. So I was just going to say, I'm just going to scroll through some of this. The proposed projects, we shared that last month, but this is, again, we have several maps that isolates each of these so that it may be easier for you to review. Again, for each of your localities, please review what we have on display. I think I have gotten feedback that we have some information that is unnecessary on a couple of localities and some information that's missing. So anything that you identify that in the proposed projects list, please let me know. I'd love to update that. We have our existing infrastructure. Same thing. If you see something that is missing, please let me know, and I'd love to have that added. We have, maps that kind of start mixing these things all together. And I explained some of the items obviously as we go, but you might remember we had our conceptual connections. That's the pink lines there. Those are obviously more of a aspirational as we try to connect that existing bike infrastructure, the proposed infrastructure, and create that overall network, active transportation network in the region. Again, we start mixing in the spines and spurs and showing those off within this. There are proposed, I should say, our proposed spurs and the local spurs as well. So again, we isolate those and we show the activity centers, and that kind of justifies a little bit why certain spurs were chosen to be highlighted here, because again, we're trying to get people to the places they want to go the most. The spines are that central delivery, and then the local spurs get people to these activity centers. So again, we mix all these again together. Some of these might be too busy for you, but as you start to dig in, you zoom in on some of these, you might be able to see a little bit better with all these layers existing together. And again, this is with that activity center map. So the last thing here, we wanted to focus on the potential spurs. We really did want to focus on the neighborhood, at the neighborhood level, also the level of stress. So as we're building this network, we want it to be an active transportation network that all users could experience. If you imagine that child that you want them to be on a protected, whether it's shared use path, a protected bike lane, cycle tracks, anything that has a lot of safety implements as part of that infrastructure. So we just chose to highlight there. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's 8 different routes here that we sort of highlighted within this map, the story map, I should say, that we thought really illustrated the ability to connect from the spine along a proposed spur network out to that activity center. This first one here is in the Chesterfield area, and I will say, I mean, you can see the fall line off to the right. That's that green line, and then the wide reddish line across is showing the Centralia, the proposed Centralia spur. It connects along Old Salem Church Road to the existing path, shared use path through the government complex that connects, I think it's at least 3, maybe 4 schools through there, plus the government complex. And then as you get to Route 10, it's proposed to cross along Courthouse Road and into the Pocahontas State Park area. So again, this spur that we're proposing would continue on to the west side of Pocahontas and to the proposed Swift Creek Greenway that gets you all the way to essentially to Hull Street and the Brander Mill Wood Lake area. So as you can see, I mean, there's activity centers connected along there. There's, obviously the existing trail, and, there are existing trails within Pocahontas State Park. The idea, I guess, would be eventually to have some enhancements to those to make it more accessible for all cyclists, not just maybe, the hardier mountain bikes. Like I said, we have 8 different highlighted here. Again, some of these, like within the city, this is, using existing network, the James River branch line here as it connects towards Westover Hills Boulevard and then north to the Boulevard Bridge and into the city. Several of these have either connections in through existing or proposed infrastructure. And like I say, the James River branch right now is the construction is underway for that particular project. I wanted to skip down. There's several of these through here, but I also wanted to point out with our eighth one, the idea of creating a new spine, a western spine, essentially crossing rivers, crossing interstates, railways. A lot of these are barriers for active transportation, and so the idea that in the west, we could essentially form another spine if we make the right enhancements along the Huguenot Road, Huguenot Bridge corridor. Henrico has a proposed connection along the Kanawha Canal, along some utility easements out to connect with Goochland, and we're hoping that that would be the beginnings of something like the either the James River Heritage Trail or as well the Three Chopped trail connection that could continue across Goochland into Fluvanna and eventually Charlottesville. But the beginnings right here as we try to get to this point, and then how we could also use that connection across the river and connect down in Chesterfield, I'm sorry, through Richmond into Chesterfield and the existing infrastructure around Polo Parkway and Robius Road areas, okay? So like I say, we've got 8 highlighted sections here, but if we go back, I'll just jump back to that original spines and spurs. There's more proposed here. All of this is, please give us feedback on whatever you want altered, what you think might not need to be on here. I will say I got some really good feedback from Henrico County already, talking about particular sections. Why was this chosen? Why was this not chosen? We could extend some of these proposed corridors, but the goal really is to essentially give you bonus points as we try to develop this network and you propose projects along here. It would be it could help with the effort to get funding for some of these projects, as well as, as we say, we're just trying to develop the overall network. I already have, hopefully this is, if I can get the chat to come up. Yeah, I'm going to share this if I can. There it goes. Anyway, we're hoping to have everyone's feedback by Friday, February 21st, for the proposed projects, the spurs and spines, and then the definitions of the spines and spurs. And I have a link to the story map in there. And I previously had shared the other map, but this hopefully will be a little bit more, better explanation for you, and visually more pleasing. But both are available. But with any questions, just please let me know. Are there? Yes, Joe.
Hi, Phil. Not a question, but just a request. Your survey here, do you mind sending that out to members in an email?
Yes, I definitely will. Thank you for asking, Joe.
Okay, yeah, great.
Any other?
Sorry. No.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Awesome. Thank you. This is good work. Moving on to item 12, regional transportation safety planning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as you may have noticed, there's no framework discussion on our agenda for today. Following up on the discussion that we had last month around safety target setting and what work's been happening across the region, I wanted to just give a quick 10 to 15 minute update, just kind of setting the context, and then open it up for a broader discussion on the role that the region can play in supporting you all to improve safety on in our transportation system. So just quickly kind of walking through sort of where we are. So we have a vision that will reliably and safely connect people across the region. And the unfortunate reality is right now that's still a vision. One person is killed every 3 days on our roadway. So each of these points is a fatal crash since January of 2020. So another way to think of that, that's about 128 people a year, or a 737 plane crash every single year in our region, right? So the scale of the problem's huge. And then when you start looking at serious injuries, it gets even bigger. It's almost 4,400 people across the last 5 years. That's 2 to 3 people every single day being seriously injured on our roadways. And I think the real challenge, and this is, I think, where we were hitting on a lot of the discussion last month, is that our progress is really slowed. You know, from the mid 2000s through the early 2010s, we saw good decline, particularly in serious injuries. And then it's been largely stagnant for the past decade. As you can see, if you look at serious injuries and fatalities combined, it's about 1,000 people a year, pretty much for a decade. So we're not seeing a lot of progress. The other trend that we've all seen recently is, even as serious injuries are declining, the fatalities are climbing. So, you know, we're actually winding up with worse outcomes and sort of the share of how that's spread. So what I wanted to hit on for just a few minutes is sort of the planning context, like what we're doing at the state level, at the MPO level, and some of the efforts that are underway at the locality level, and then talk about where we think Plan RVA is best positioned to help support you all in moving forward and trying to bring these numbers down. So on the planning context, I think everybody's seen the safe systems approach, but nationally, we have moved to the safe systems model. And the safe systems model is basically starts with the assumption that people are going to make mistakes, and our bodies are fragile and we're vulnerable. So we need to build in safety proactively, and it's the way we achieve that is through redundancy, right? And so by having safe users, safe vehicles, safe speed, safe roads, and post-crash care, we make sure that if there is a crash, we're trying to prevent the crashes, but if they do happen, that we're mitigating the worst outcomes and that it stays as an injury and not a fatality. And so it's basically combining all 5 of these elements together. It's a little bit different from the traditional 4 E's because it's kind of putting that system-wide sort of Swiss cheese model that net, but at the end of the day, it's drawing on the same tools as the traditional 4 E's, right? And how are we applying that? So the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, which is the Commonwealth's plan for safety, takes each of those 5 buckets and then pulls out emphasis areas. So this is looking at the data on crashes, seeing what would offer the most benefit if we were to focus in that area, and then slotting them in where they fit appropriately. So you can see this is the 22 to 26 Strategic Highway Safety Plan. There's a couple new emphasis areas that weren't in the previous plan: aging road users, motorcyclists, and heavy vehicles. And so these are the areas where we focus the planning efforts at the state and as well as the regional level on for safety. And it's all done with data and analytics. So it's all a data-driven process. If you actually read through the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, it's a lot of policy and recommendations, both near-term and long-term, on how to improve safety. And then that's operationalized through a lot of the actual work that you all are doing and that VDOT's working on. So a couple years ago, as you all know, and I think most of you were on the committee at the time, we had the Vision Zero work group, and we worked through development of the Regional Transportation Safety Plan. And at its core, that was mostly a sort of data exercise. We didn't get to recommendations for projects or specific priorities for investments. It was not an action plan. So what we did was develop a high injury network. And I mean, basically what that is, and you all know this, but the high injury network is the roadways that are disproportionately contributing to our serious injuries and fatalities. So this is the town of Ashland, and I think this is important to highlight, is that those high injury networks don't generally change too much without intervention. So we developed that with the 2016 to 2020 data. This is the new 2020 to 2024 data overlaid on it, and we still see that excluding the interstate crashes, 3/4 of the serious injuries and 100% of the fatalities are still on that high injury network. And so this is sort of answering the question of where should we be focusing our efforts for safety. The second part of what we did was look at the crash factors, which was taking those emphasis areas from the Strategic Highway Safety Plan and looking at how they were cross-tabulated. So like under impaired driving, 17% of those crashes also involved speeding. And what that helps us to identify are these crosscuts, in this case, intersections, where focusing on that area would give benefits broadly across all of the other crashes that we're focusing on. And so that helps us know sort of the what. So we know the where, we know the what, and then we have to figure out the how. And that's the part that we left up to you all. So what I think at the end of the plan, we provided a list of proven countermeasures. We provided some crash trees to help provide some information on for making those decisions. And I think we also provided an overlay of the PSAP corridors. So that was sort of the extent that we did with our plan. But what I want to highlight is there's sort of a range of options on how we go about addressing safety. And so this line at the bottom is kind of reactive on the left side, proactive on the right side. So sort of the traditional model for safety is you look at the hot spots and you go in and look at what's happening. You engineer a solution, you build something. The challenge with the hotspot is we're only focusing on one area. It's a little bit slower because we have to go through full study and engineering process. And at the end of the day, that's fixing one spot. And it does a really good job, but there's still all the other crashes and it might just move somewhere else on the corridor. So then the next level up is sort of the corridor level analysis, where we're looking at those hotspots, but also everything in between them, and trying to look at safety a little bit more proactively along the entire corridor as we do those studies. So that's something more along the lines of like the STAR studies model. And then we get down to systemic safety, which I'll hit on a little bit more, but this is sort of the proactive approach to safety. And it's focused on not responding to the crashes that have happened so much as mitigating the risk that's associated with those crashes. And so I think you all are already aware of this, but the HSIP program is primarily a systemic program. So it still does have funding for hotspots, but it's primarily focused on systemic investments. And basically, I love this infographic. This is something from Federal Highways, but it is a checkup for the road system, right? So what are we looking at? The symptom is we've got a bunch of roadway departures on curves. We know what the risk factors are, so we can map those out. And we can look at all the different areas where those risk factors are occurring. And then we can prioritize treatment for the areas where we have the highest amount of risk factors. And so by focusing on the highest risk, we're not necessarily focusing on where all the crashes are occurring, but we're bringing down the overall risk level, right? We can't fix the exposure part because people are still going to be using the corridor to drive and get where they need to go, but we can bring down the hazard part of it. So that's kind of the focus on the systemic. And the cool thing with systemic investments is they're generally low-cost proven countermeasures. So in the case of these curves, the example here is adding chevrons or rumble strips, but it's basically lower cost interventions that can be deployed a little bit more quickly too. So that's the focus on the HSIP program. So I only put this all in here as there's sort of a range of how we can respond to the information that we have on safety. And so some of the current efforts and what we're doing at the MPO, a lot of what we do is sort of collecting the data, building the pipeline for future projects. So one of the projects we have underway is looking at a sidewalk analysis around bus stops. We found that the majority of pedestrian fatalities were within the ped shed of a bus stop. And so by focusing on the pedestrian improvements around the bus stop, we're proactively trying to get ahead there. And this is just a quick snapshot off of Midlothian Turnpike. Another project we're working on is grade crossings, because we did have a rash of fatalities at grade crossings over the past few years. So we were trying to focus on that as well. The state has a plan that already looks at that, but this is downscaling it to the regional level. And another cool project that we're working on right now, and this hasn't actually gone live yet, so you guys are getting a sneak preview, is our near miss dashboard. So we've been working on building out a near miss dashboard. So this is proactive safety, primarily for pedestrians and cyclists, but you're able to report events that aren't crashes, so otherwise wouldn't be included in the crash data. But like, say you're a pedestrian, you're crossing the crosswalk and someone turns through the crosswalk while you're in it. There wasn't a crash, but that has the potential to be a safety event. So this way we can record it and start getting ahead of it and mapping out where are we seeing these occurring, so we can start thinking of how best to respond and plan for those. And then I did just want to highlight the three Safe Streets for All efforts that are underway across the region. So the city of Richmond obviously is Vision Zero City, and they have been a Vision Zero City for a while. So they're a little bit ahead on this process, but the city's gotten supplemental planning through Safe Streets for All. and also implementation funding for countermeasures along the high injury network. And I think the speed cameras around school zones is probably the most prominent thing that everybody notices and can see as you travel through the city these days. And I know I've passed a couple on my way into work every day, and they're definitely working on slowing people down. Chesterfield is right behind. They've just wrapped up their Safe Streets for All program. I think we just saw in the news that they're looking at speed cameras in school zones as well. And there are several RSAs underway this year to look at those high injury network corridors and identify improvements. And then Henrico also has a Safe Streets for All planning grant. I think theirs is scheduled to be completed this spring. So we don't have the updated high injury network and mapping right now, but they'll be quickly behind catching up on where Chesterfield's at right now. So everybody's kind of moving forward with the same sort of model thanks to the Safe Streets for All program. And I want to highlight that because there's a ton of money that's been flowing through that program and a ton of money still on the table with that program. So regional focus, pretty briefly, going back to the safe systems approach, our natural sort of where we fit into the planning is really the safe users, safe speeds, and safe roads. As much as ITS is involved, we can help with safe vehicles, but that's not really where our expertise is, and neither is it on the emergency response side. So these are sort of the three buckets where we probably can provide the most support in what we're able to offer. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is the hierarchy of traffic safety controls. And I'm sure some of you have seen this before, but basically this is borrowed from like industrial safety, industrial engineering. The idea is that the more individual action that's required, the less effective that is in improving the safety outcomes overall. So the idea of, reflective vests or education campaigns, just marked crosswalks, they have value, but they're less effective than actually engineering away the hazard, right? And so this is sort of the range of sort of options and programs that we can do. And I only highlight this to say we can definitely support down here, but we also want to help up here with the substitution and elimination sides of things. So the first thing, I've heard a lot of interest in a regional education campaign. I think this is a fantastic idea. Basically, instead of each locality working on messaging, we can work together and reach 1.1 million people with the same message. And I think that's a great way to start. The other part of this would be opportunities here at the TAC to have regular discussions around safety as well as at the policy board. Another option that we have on the table, and I think this is going to happen one way or another, is the update to the safety plan. And I put action in parentheses because, as I mentioned, we didn't have an action plan before. But I think if we're able to fold in the 3 plans that have come through the Safe Streets for All program and then redo the study for the remaining localities in the region, we could get to a set of prioritized investments across the region of what we want to focus on and what we need to do next. Road safety audits or corridor studies. So this would be following up on our high injury network and just taking a deeper dive on that corridor to see what exactly is going on. We would be traveling the corridor, looking at all the different things that might be contributing to some of the safety issues and trying to address some of them proactively before they cause crashes. Crash analysis studio. This is an interesting idea. There was one done in the city of Richmond a couple years ago, but the idea is basically for high profile crashes or for any crash that you would be interested in, we could support in doing more of a full cause. So, beyond the engineering and the roadway design or what decisions were made by the drivers or any of that, taking a step back to understand everything that could have possibly contributed to this outcome. So this is the idea is borrowed from like the NTSB's airplane crashes, the way they look at that and try and get a holistic view, and also from M&M conferences that doctors do. So in a hospital, in a training hospital, if there's someone dies, the hospital will conduct M&M conferences. And basically what they look at is not trying to blame and look at who did what wrong and had this outcome, but trying to understand all the factors that went into it and try and learn from best practices to see what could be done in the future to make it better and have a better outcome. So the idea would be this would be not every crash, but on certain crashes, if you guys wanted to do a deeper dive, we could support in doing that as well. And then the last part that I'm excited for, and I think this is really getting to sort of the full range of what we could be doing, would be a demo pilot program. And so this infographic is borrowed from another MPO, but this is very similar to the city's lighter, quicker, cheaper program. The idea is that safety is not a long-range planning problem. Safety is a today problem. So what can we do today, once we've identified the problem, to go out and get something on the ground? And so part of that would be just temporary low-cost materials to test out an idea, then moving into something a little bit more permanent, and then into final construction. So the way we'd envision something like this would be a partnership with VDOT as well as the localities that maintain your own systems. And we could potentially provide some of the materials for it. But it's really making this something a little bit more programmatic, that we can move from demo project to semi-permanent to final construction, that we're building that pipeline of safety projects. And I did want to highlight that this is already happening across the region. We just don't have a cohesive approach across all of our jurisdictions, right? So these are 3 separate roundabouts in Chesterfield County that are in really those 3 stages of development. So the first one is really just paint and flex posts. The next one is a modular roundabout design, so less expensive, $1 million range, not the $7 million range. And then the final one is got concrete, brick, landscaping. It's all the good stuff. So it's a more expensive roundabout. But these are all 3 projects that were put in by VDOT and represent different variations on what we could do in partnership. And the idea would just be trying to find a way to make this into something more regular and something we can all work sort of with the same basis on. So those are a range of ideas, and I'm just throwing these out as ideas that we think we could help support. And I just want to open it up to discussion here, because really we're here to listen and understand what other ideas there are and how best we can support you. So thank you.
Thank you, Miles. So excited about Vision Zero and safety across the region. Yep, Barb?
I was wondering if there's an opportunity to use the Plan RVA emergency response work group, right? You guys get together region-wide, police or fire, and talk about shared resources, maybe for that safe systems approach post-crash care. Maybe there's an opportunity to have a discussion with that group on initiatives, or, I think a lot of it, getting the crash truck at the crash scene, we heard from our fire department that oftentimes the reason they bring the big fire engine out there is to protect people responding to the scene, when really a crash truck is more effective and cheaper if someone were to crash into it. So some of that, I know VDOT is already doing that, trying to have on-call tow trucks for quick response on crash scenes. So maybe there's a way to kind of build off what VDOT's already doing, kind of expand that region wide. I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you. Amy?
Okay. Thanks, Madam Chair. So, Miles, this is really good. I really like the thought about doing the deep dive and, fully understanding the, kind of the reasons behind the crashes, fatalities, serious injuries. But I really think sort of the biggest, most immediate impact would be, a safety education and awareness campaign. That's something I think that, we have really great folks at Plan RVA now that I think could put together an amazing outreach package that could go out to media, could go out to, a wide audience, right? In particular where cyclists are concerned. I think that's where pedestrians and cyclists, right, both. That where we really, I think, could sort of educate people on what the rules are, what the laws are, and that, cyclists do have a right to be on the road, and, being threatened and, having near misses is unacceptable. And I also think that we, while our law enforcement is very, thin, they're busy doing a lot of other things. If there's any way that we could have an easier way to capture those bad drivers. Now we have the videos, the radars, the Varias, and they also have video on there. So if somebody does have an accident or whatever, it could assist in getting the license plate numbers and that sort of thing. I don't have the video when I'm going to have that, but I have the radar, and it's incredibly helpful to alert me when cars are coming up behind me. But I think there would be helpful to understand, with our local law enforcement, what could we do to help document these things and also report them, and what good will that do, right? So if we do capture license plates and, these sort of near misses or bad behavior from these drivers, being hostile towards cyclists, what would that do for us? So I think that would be an interesting conversation to have. And, likewise, I mean, with pedestrians as well, I mean, that's another place where, I think we have to have a lot more conversation and education about, pedestrian safety, and on both sides, right? Drivers and pedestrians. And the same with cyclists too, but because I know cyclists sometimes get a little ahead of themselves, and we might not obey all the stop signs and this and that. So it works both ways, but the cyclists and pedestrians are the most vulnerable users and should have a higher level of protection, and in that and in that regard. So I guess that's all to say, is there a possibility that we can bring a group together that can work on a campaign of this nature, and get that out in a more immediate time frame?
So
Miles, do you want to
yeah,
answer
so
that?
if I can respond, I think, I mean, our intent was to create space within the TAC meeting. So rather than standing up the Vision Zero work group, just to have a set aside every TAC meeting, every other TAC meeting where we can just focus on safety. So I think we could start working through some of those ideas that way. And then if we need to work beyond that, I think we can definitely do that as well. Our goal would be, I think that the education campaign is a little difficult. We have to find funding to do it, right? This is not something that falls under the sort of traditional planning work that we do. So there's only so far we can go with our existing funding sources. So that's the other piece of the challenge, but I think we're open to figuring it out. And we just wanted to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. So as we're starting to build up our work plan for next year, we know what we need to be chasing after.
Okay, just a quick follow-up, Madam Chair. So, Miles, I thought there was already a work program item in your current work program for sort of communications and outreach as it relates to safety. Oops.
So what we had in the work plan for this year was essentially the effort that we're doing right now. It was to reconvene our Vision Zero team and figure out what the region's role is for safety. And so that's what we had built in for this year. And that's what we're trying to do, is tee it up so that as we come back to you in another month or two with the proposals for the focus areas for the upcoming year, we can have a clear path and have a strategy laid out on how we're going to roll that out.
But I mean, the outreach can be a work program item. I mean, funding for that, I would imagine, could be something that is eligible, right? I mean, media outreach and that sort of thing.
So we can discuss a little bit more offline if you'd like, but there are some limits on terms of collateral and what we can do with planning money. So I think that's where I'm saying there are other grants that would be better supported. So like the DMV has a program to support these sorts of efforts. So there might be better funding sources more aligned with a broader initiative if that's what we're going after.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. And Miles, I'll just add to Amy's point on that. I think in helping to determine whether or not the TPO would go after some of those DMV grants to actually do the campaign as described, or is it through, again, some of our existing funding that we have, that we program into the work plan, those funds outside of the planning funds. So I definitely think that we definitely want to always be thinking about how we're gonna fund and how we can set those things up. So maybe again, inquiring about the timeframes on the DMV and how might um, the TPO or Plan RVA help with that.
Yes, I appreciate that, Madam Chair. I think flexibility is our goal, so figuring out the best way to move forward.
Yep. Barb and then Amy.
I think you've already hinted at this with the updating the existing transportation plan. I don't think it would take a whole lot to turn that into a Safe Streets for All compliant plan. And there's another funding source to go after in addition to the DMV. So hopefully we'll be able to do that. I don't think it would be a huge work effort.
And I guess I would assume do we know if the TPO type is eligible for SS or A funds?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, perfect. Amy?
Okay, thanks. And just quick follow-up. So I think most of the localities have PR people and have mechanisms to get things out, media advisories and that sort of thing that don't cost anything. We're not talking about putting in, buying media time or commercial time, right? TV spots. We're not necessarily talking about that. We're talking about getting things out through mechanisms that are already in place that have a high impact. So to me, that's a low cost, no brainer way of getting this information out. What I'm suggesting is that the TPO take responsibility for putting these things together, similar to what Barb maybe is saying, and something that can get pushed out in a media advisory. Holly is great. I mean, she could put together a media advisory, in her sleep. So, we have people that are really, really good and talented right now at TPO in messaging, and Kristen, they're amazing, right? So why not take advantage of them and not take advantage, but why not really utilize their skills that they have and let them put this stuff together and get it out. That's what I'm saying. So it shouldn't be a big effort, a big lift. It's something that I think is doable, and we should see something happening in an immediate time frame.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate that clarification, because I think there's a range of what a education campaign could be. So saying that you want to focus on just working with our existing, locality PR people to get messaging out, I think that's an easier lift than to your other comment about ad campaigns on the TV or something like that. So I think we can scale it appropriately, and we can bring back some options of what that could look like. The whole goal of this conversation for us is really to get the ideas so we can bring it back to you as part of the work plan. And so when we come back in another month or two, we can say, here's what we've thought through of exactly how we can support from what we heard in this conversation.
Thank you. Joe.
Yeah, real quickly. Hey, Miles, you mentioned near miss reporting. How do we go about doing that if I wanted to report a near miss?
So we will be rolling it out next month for everyone. So more to come on that, but I just wanted to give you a preview because we are trying to build that pipeline for data right now. But that should be rolled out, I think, at our Plan RVA Day, which is our Pathways to the Future Symposium on Pi Day on March 14th.
Great.
All right. Thank you, Miles. And I'm just going to have to do a time check. We want to go to our next item, the flexible regional funding. And then I would see if only, I know we have some grants open, so only pressing transportation updates to wrap us up for today. All right, Miles.
So thanks again, Madam Chair. This is a really quick update. We wanted to let you know, since the applications closed at the end of January, we had 10 applications for a total of $32 million in requests for existing projects. We obviously haven't had a chance to analyze them all yet, but we'll be bringing that back to you next month with recommendations on funding for each of those requests, and that's for your review and then a recommendation to the policy board from there.
Awesome.
That's it.
Sounds like you can fund all of it. All right, moving on. Do we have any pressing agency updates? DRPT, I know. VDOT.
Nothing pressing from DRPT.
Awesome. Any others?
I have one thing I could just share really quickly, and that is just that GRTC is rolling out our public safety officers and our public safety ambassadors. And so if you see those at our transit hubs, like the downtown transfer station, there's going to be some armed public safety officers there that are just going to ensure safety. And then public safety ambassadors will be riding the buses, and those are just folks that are there to provide additional support to the operators, kind of also provide any kind of information that they may have to riders if they have any questions, but also just be ultimately an extra pair of eyes and more of an assist on the buses. So that is the only update from GRTC as far as something that's rolling out this month.
Very good, thank you. Nora.
Nothing pressing from Ride Finders either. I have updated and sent the information I was going to talk with today to Plan RVA, and it'll be in the minutes for that.
Thank you. We will look to those minutes. I'm sorry, Nora?
Question for DRPT. We received the railroad crossing elimination grant, and then it sounds from emails we've gotten that perhaps that money is on hold or might be removed. Do you all know anything about those federal funds or other federal funds that might not be coming now?
That's a great question. I think, like everybody else, we are kind of in a wait and see holding pattern until we learn more about what the direction is going to be regarding federal funds.
Yeah, Nora, we were a recipient as well. And the most we've gotten is just that the training that was scheduled, I think, for today or tomorrow or this week, it has been postponed. But I was just optimistically hoping that it would, keep up and keep moving in the weeks and months to come.
This is Sharon with Henrico and Dirona and Nora. I have the same information as well. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Nora. Good point. Thank you. All right. Do we have any other TAC member comments? Don't forget to take a look at the Plan RVA newsletter. Our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March the 11th. It's 10:15 a.m. and I call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.